It's TA with MK. It's TA with MK. Gents and ladies, no time to waste. Don't be afraid, it's time to trade. Let's start your brains like high-speed trains. Storm these games like hurricanes. It's time to save this herd this days. Put on your cape and learn the phrase. It's TA with MK. It's TA with MK. Hello, hello, and hello. Welcome back to another episode of TA with MK. My name is MK. Today's video, we're going to briefly go over the weekly and monthly chart as far as it pertains to identifying the best times to buy Bitcoin on a macro level. Zoomed out, you're a hodler and you want to, know when's the best time to buy Bitcoin and accumulate it to hold for the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years, right? We're going to talk about that in today's video. Do me a favor, guys. Leave me some comments in the comment section of some of the, some topics, I guess, you'd like me to go over. My plan is to put out several more videos soon that are to do with just more trading strategies and, things to look for as far as it pertains to short and midterm trades. But today's video, we're just focusing more on a macro level. And then, as time goes on, we'll figure out what you guys want me to discuss and we will cater the channel towards that. In the meantime, if you are liking the content, please remember to like and subscribe, and let's go. Now, this first one, which is going to be the Bitcoin monthly chart, this is going to be the one that you want to pay the most attention to because this one's going to be the simplest to follow. There's not a lot of data points, but what we do have tells us, it paints a very clear picture as to when is the best times, historically to buy Bitcoin, right? And, hold for long term. So, on this chart, the Bitcoin monthly chart, now this is on Bitstamp on TradingView. This is just the chart that has the most data on TradingView. It goes back to 2011. Now Bitcoin obviously has been around since 2010, but this chart it has the most data. You go look at like Binance's chart, doesn't go back that far. COINBASE, of course, charts like that, they just don't give you as much data. But here on this Bitcoin monthly chart, right, on Bitstamp, I've drawn you can kind of see that Bitcoin's history, it's just been in somewhat of a rising channel, right? It's just been going up over time. It's been making a series of swing highs and then little loops and then swing high and little loops and swing highs, right? And so pretty easy to see that Bitcoin is in a nice uptrend since 2011, right? But there's also a couple things that you can pay attention to that can help you know, hey, where is the bottom, and where is going to be the top? Well, one of the most simple on the monthly chart is if you double click, we come down here to the stochastic RSI, right? So on the stochastic RSI, if I look and I see, okay, each time that this blue crossed over the orange, so below the orange, right, which is bearish, and came back down from these oversold area up top here. So this is, anytime it's up here, it can be up here for a while. This is Bitcoin being oversold. But historically, while Bitcoin's up here, that's when you get the most upward price movement. Once it crosses bearishly back into the purple zone down here, this usually calls the top, or at least it has the previous couple times. Now, one of the exceptions would have been right here in 2013. It called a top. You had this top right here when Bitcoin was at around $200. This crossed into the purple zone, but then it had one more little cross bullish and came back up. And during that, Bitcoin went from $70 back up to like $1,300. So pretty good little pump. But the bigger thing I wanted to tell you is that this could actually help you know when to buy, almost more than when to sell, really. Obviously, if anytime you sell anywhere near the top of this purple, you were going to be pretty happy that you sold some. You're going to take profits. But let's just say you're wanting to hold longer term, and you're just trying to decide from macro zoomed out perspective, when is the best time to accumulate some Bitcoin, for the next 5 or 10 years if you're planning on holding on to it. Well, basically, anytime that this leaves this, so it goes down here in the oversold area, which is just anything below this purple, right? Back down into this zone. Basically, it's from 20, down to 0. That's going to be your oversold area, right? Well, it can hang out in the oversold area for quite some time, and it doesn't necessarily mean buying down here is always smart, because if you look right here, as soon as this left, let me clear this up just a little bit. As soon as this right here left the purple zone and got down here, you go up here, Bitcoin was still sitting at $750. But by the time it came all the way down here, during that time it went as low as $150. So that's significant pullback. The key is when it leaves this oversold area and the blue crosses back over the orange, right? So like down here, you can put an Alt V right here, for example. As soon as it crosses back out of here, that represents the best time to buy Bitcoin. You know, if you look up here, that was the bottom in the bear market in 2015, before we eventually ran all the way up from $185 clear up to, you know, essentially 19K, right? Almost. And then over here, same thing, right? Bitcoin enters back down into this purple zone from the top. You can see that pretty well called the top for Bitcoin in 2017 or 2018 anyway. And then you come all the way down here. The first time it hung out down here and oversold for, you know, roughly 575 days. Down here for about 425 days. But again, if we put Alt V right here, as soon as it left oversold and blue crossed over orange, which happened right here, right? Bitcoin was chilling down here at about $3,900. You know, wouldn't you be super happy today if you would have bought Bitcoin at $3,900 and then just wrote it up here, and you can sell some of it along the way. You know, your best to sell and take some profits unless you're holding long term and that's all you care about. You know, anytime it's getting up here to the top, you know, sell bits and pieces. And again, this came down. So basically right now we're back down here in the oversold area. And a lot of people might tell you, hey, that's the best time to buy Bitcoin. And if you are going to hold for 5 or 10 years and you believe in Bitcoin, they're not wrong. You know, anytime you're down here, that's obviously going to represent a safer area to buy than up here, right? For sure. But really what you want to look for is a bullish cross, and for the blue to be over orange and cross back above 20, right? If it gets back above there, you at least know that, you know, it's going to be a short-term bottom, most likely, that you're purchasing at. So, and if you look, actually, each time it's left this area, the price has never went that low again. So right here, the price was at, you know, 185 bucks. When it crossed blue right here, the price was at, I guess this one's the one that's the exception, actually. I take that back because you had the COVID dip. The COVID dip brought it back a little tiny bit. Basically, it ended up being a double bottom, essentially. Like, the prices are pretty close right there. But had you bought here and held, you know, when it had the pullback for COVID, which happened right here, you would have been at a small percentage loss briefly. Of course, you'd been much, you know, then you could have bought more right then as you were approaching down here. But at any rate, you would have been in significant profits, you know, just fast forward a couple years later, right? So the monthly chart just helps kind of paint this picture from a stochastic point of view anyway, that of when's the best time to buy. Also, I want to quickly show you, if we double click and go into the RSI, so let's go over here and double click. This is the RSI, the relative strength index, right? And it's only got 2 data points to go off, but in Bitcoin's history, basically it's reached this oversold on the monthly chart, this oversold area of around 45 twice, right? It reached it here and it reached it here. So if we put Alt V on our keyboard here, and maybe we could change the color so we can see it clear when we get back out on the other chart. We're going to go to, let's make it blue, right? We'll make this one blue. And blue, blue, blue. Okay. So now we're going to double click and go back out here and just look at price action. So what did the price action do each time it hit that exact level, right? Right here it called the bottom in 2015 at around 200 bucks. And right here it called the short-term bottom. Again, we'll say that COVID kind of spoiled this as not ending up being the ultimate bottom. It still was the bottom. It's lower if you look really close than the COVID dip. I didn't really notice that when we were zoomed out more, but it actually was the bottom. So it called the bottom. You just gave away some of your profits when the COVID dip happened. And then, of course, you know, once again, it went on this crazy rally. So sometimes you could use on these zoomed out time frames. If you're a macro investor and you want to buy Bitcoin today, not today, obviously, but if you want to buy some Bitcoin in the next 6 months to 2 years, and you plan to hold it for 5, 10, 15 years, you can use something as simple strategy as just these indicators to know kind of when the best, you know, absolute best times to buy Bitcoin are, right? All right, we got a little long-winded there and kind of repeated ourselves quite a bit, so I apologize for that. The next couple we won't spend as much time on, but this is the Bitcoin weekly chart, and on this one I just wanted to kind of go over the EMAs and the SMAs, so the exponential moving averages and the simple moving averages as it relates to the best times to buy Bitcoin. So on the weekly chart here, you don't have quite enough data for the 200, which is the blue and the yellow here. The blue is the EMA and the yellow is the SMA. They don't go back all the way because there's just not enough candles. Bitcoin hasn't been around long enough, but you can kind of tell just in Bitcoin's history that when it's in a significant uptrend or a bull run, that it uses these whites, which is the 50s moving averages. Sorry, not 50. These are the 21-day moving averages, EMA and SMA, and then the pink and the red here are the 50s, right? You can see that it uses them, especially the 21, as support. Here it did briefly lose it, but then it was able to bounce kind of on the 50s, got back above them. And then you can kind of see that once it is in a, the beginning of the downtrend or the bear market, that it eventually loses the 21s. You can see here that crossed, now it's below it. They're acting as resistance. And until it breaks back above all those and gets back above the 21s, that's kind of your bear market, right? And then the bull market is when it's using the 21s as a support. Now, if the 200s went back far enough and had enough data, you'd kind of look and tell that it uses the 200s to ultimately call at or near the bottom, right? Do that. Okay. So we can't tell back here, but you can see here that Bitcoin was able to bounce on the 200s, the 50s and the 21s. It was then able to gain those, and then it went on its crazy run, right? Same thing happened back here where eventually it lost them. These became resistance, but then sure enough, it bounces on this yellow one, which is the 200 SMA, kind of gets squeezed between the 200s, goes back up for another rally. COVID dip comes, it briefly loses the 200s. Now that was kind of a unique situation, of course, but ultimately it quickly got back above the 200s, and the 200s, then it gets back into a ultra bull mode and uses the 50s and the 21s as support again, right? So on the weekly chart, you can kind of tell that the best times to buy Bitcoin there is when it revisits the 200s. Moving averages, right? Obviously, may be down there for a little while. If we look at this right here, I'm going to guess that if the 200s extended back, that it may have been visiting them around here, and you went almost 250 days before you finally saw some upward movement. But on the plus side of that, you were buying basically this bottom along here, right? And then you wrote it up. Same thing here. It visited the 200s here. Let's say you bought Bitcoin at around 3,000. Sure enough, it visits it again with a COVID dip. Maybe you decide to buy some more. Maybe you don't. At any rate, this was a double bottom. You bought it at the right time. So historically, Bitcoin likes to, now there's not a lot of data points, but historically it likes to visit the 200s on the weekly to retest those as support. Right now, you can kind of see we're in the process of what's happened twice in the past where we've lost these moving averages up here. We're kind of testing them as resistance now. So it wouldn't be, surprising at some point in the next, few weeks to few months, for this to eventually work its way back down to test these 200s. Now, because these move up over time, we don't know exactly where they'll be at from a price perspective when it visits them. But, a lot of people that are calling for 20K, 25K, this is kind of something that could make sense to that, proclamation or whatever the word is, that it could go back there at some point. Because if you see this, if let's just imagine these trend up a little bit and maybe sometime, later this summer or early summer, we decide to come down and we, dip and visit those, that would realistically put us somewhere between, 23.5K to maybe 26K, right? We could visit that area at some point. You never know if something similar to COVID happens or it dips just a little lower. Maybe you do get 20K, but at any rate, you would expect at that point that would be a really good time to buy Bitcoin, right? Because historically, even if it hangs out there for a while, maybe you get another 2-3 months, maybe you get another year where it hangs out, down there at around 20 to 25K, At some point, though, it's going to begin its next bull run, and then you'll get back above the 21s and make that next big push higher, right? And that is all for today. In tomorrow's video, we're going to dive into the daily chart and specifically the 12-hour chart for Bitcoin to kind of discuss some strategies that you can use to know when's the best time to open up short and midterm trades. Obviously, the monthly and weekly are the best to use for the longer term trades or for your bags that you're going to hold for, the next several years. But assuming that you got into the space because you also want to do short and midterm trades and try to make some money while your other bags are either staked or just chilling, right? We're going to discuss that in tomorrow's video. And if you guys are liking the content, please remember to like and subscribe. And we'll catch you guys tomorrow. It's TAwithMMK.